Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. If you'd like to see more information about this podcast, or if you'd like to see more of my free resources, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com. But for now, I really hope that you enjoy this podcast, and if you do, then I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe on iTunes and leave a positive review so that more people can have the chance to listen to this great work. Hi there, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. I'm Simon Drew, and I'm so grateful that you're listening to this. You know, there will always be people who do things that have the potential to hurt and offend us. To wish negative people did not exist would be madness, and if we wish to guard ourselves against these people, the very first step is to recognize that they will always be there. People will always lie, cheat, steal, gossip, hate, deceive, and say hurtful things. Often we question why people lie, why people cheat, or why people are hateful. Whenever I find myself having these thoughts, I think of a speech by Jim Rohn, where he said that liars lie, that's what they do. And that's why they're called liars. What else would you expect them to do? This is a simple way to look at life, and it definitely makes sense to me. Expecting a cheater to not cheat would be like expecting lemons to grow on an apple tree. In his diary, Marcus Aurelius wrote about many of the questions of life that we all face, including how to deal with hurtful or inconsiderate people. In this podcast, I would like to share some of my favorite advice given by Marcus Aurelius, so that you may be better prepared for dealing with these people in the future. The first lesson is this, quote, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. All these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. But I who have seen the nature of the good that it is beautiful, and of the bad that it is ugly, and the nature of him who does wrong, that it is akin to me, I can neither be injured by any of them, for no one can fix on me what is ugly, nor can I be angry with my kinsmen, nor hate them. For we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against one another, then, is contrary to my nature, and it is acting against one another to be vexed and turned away." End quote. This is a perfect quote to read every single morning, because it makes one aware of the inevitable forthcomings of the day, and reminds us that we must act in a spirit of cooperation with all people. The first takeaway from this lesson is that there is no point in becoming angry when we are faced with these kinds of people, for we know that they will always be there. It is a serious flaw in the human condition that we are so prone to becoming surprised over aspects of life that are so unsurprising. The second lesson to learn here is that we must face each day with an attitude of cooperation. How can we work well with these people who would do us harm? How can we turn enemies into friends? How can we fix broken relationships? We need to do these things because we are all here for cooperation, not conflict. The second lesson that I want to teach from Marcus Aurelius is in this quote. Quote, "He who does wrong against himself. He who acts unjustly to himself, because he makes himself bad." End quote. Here, Marcus Aurelius reminds us that really it is not we who are hurt by the wrongdoers, but it is the wrongdoers themselves who are hurt. Analyze the acts of the negative person, and you will soon find that their life is being affected more than yours. Pity the person who acts unjustly towards you, for theirs is a life of loneliness and pain. The next lesson that I want to share from Marcus Aurelius is this, quote, "When another blames thee or hates thee, or when men say about thee anything injurious, approach their poor souls, penetrate within, and see what kind of men they are. thou wilt discover that there is no reason to take any trouble that these men have this or that opinion about thee. However, thou must be well disposed towards them, for by nature they are friends." End quote. Have you ever really looked deep into the life of a person who has wronged you, only to find that you don't want or need their approval or support anyway? Why should you wish to be approved by gossips or negative people? Why would you wish to spend your time with these people? Look at the kind of person he or she is who wrongs you, and you will surely question why it is that you're paying so much attention to them in the first place. Again, Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we must act towards them in a spirit of friendship, because that is our nature. But do not pay any unnecessary heed to their words or deeds. The fourth lesson from Marcus Aurelius is this, quote, "When thou art offended with any man's shameless conduct, immediately ask thyself, is it possible, then, that shameless men should not be in the world? It is not possible. Do not, then, require what is impossible, for this man is one of those shameless men who must of necessity be in the world. Let that same consideration be present to thy mind in the case of the knave, and of the faithless man, and of every man who does wrong in any way. For at the same time that thou dost remind thyself that it is impossible that such kind of men should not exist, thou wilt become more kindly disposed towards everyone individually." End quote. As I mentioned in the start of this podcast, it is important to recognize that wrongdoers and negative people will always be in the world, and it is madness to expect otherwise. Marcus Aurelius suggests that it is a necessity that they should be here, and he is right, for without the negative there is no positive. There would be no good without bad, so why should we wish away the bad? When you come to terms with the fact that these people will always be here, then you will, as Marcus Aurelius suggests, act in a more pleasing nature towards them. Lesson number 5 is this, quote, "Consider that thou dost many things wrong, and that thou art a man like others. And even if thou dost abstain from certain faults, still thou hast the disposition to commit them, though either through cowardice or concern about reputation or some such mean motive, thou dost abstain from such faults." End quote. Every time you feel offended, simply remember that you are not perfect either. You have not lived a life that is without fault in the eyes of others, and so you may understand why these people do what they do. We are all human, and at times we act unjustly or without reason. And as Marcus Aurelius points out here, even if we don't believe that we have acted in these ways, we can still recognize that we have oftentimes felt the desire to do so. The next lesson from Marcus Aurelius is this, quote, "Consider that thou dost not even understand whether men are doing wrong or not, for many things are done with a certain reference to circumstances. And, in short, a man must learn a great deal to enable him to pass correct judgment on another man's acts." End quote. In the future, you must be sure to correctly analyze the situations and motives that were in place when you took offense or were hurt by somebody's actions. It is always important to recognize that we should never judge, seeing as we almost never know all of the information. Remember that you might have done exactly what that person did if you had been in his or her position. This is an extremely comforting way of thinking, because it allows us to understand the role that fate plays in our lives. For example, if you were born in the Middle East, the chances are that you would have grown up as a Muslim, and so all of your decisions that you make in your life would be based around that religion's teachings and philosophies. If, however, you were born in India, you most likely would be making your decisions based on Hindu teachings. If you were born in the deep south of the United States, you might have grown up in Christianity, and so your choices and thoughts are based around those teachings. Where we are born is completely up to chance, and yet it has such a massive impact on the rest of a person's life. If you can recognize the impact that these circumstances have on a person's decisions, then you can have greater tolerance towards all people and their beliefs and actions, because you will know that if you had been in their position, you may have done exactly what they do or felt exactly how they feel. The seventh lesson that I want to share is this, quote, "It is not men's acts which disturb us, for those acts have their foundations in men's ruling principles, but it is our own opinions which disturb us. Take away these opinions then, and resolve to dismiss thy judgment about an act as if it were something grievous, and thy anger is gone." End quote. This is one of the most important lessons to learn when it comes to freeing the mind from worry in regards to other people's actions or choices. Everything is opinion. Something that seems wrong or immoral to you may seem perfectly normal to somebody else. This is one of the most misunderstood facts in the world, and this misunderstanding is one of the biggest creators of conflict among people. I know that I have fallen into this trap many times in my life, and I've spent so much time worrying about what other people have done, and this has never helped me in any way. Stoicism has been extremely important and helpful to me in being able to move on and accept that I can only control my own actions and not those of people around me. When we finally recognize that everything is opinion, we are more inclined to love and accept people instead of condemning them. Here's a little exercise that you can do the next time that you feel offended by something that somebody says or does. Think to yourself, if I had grown up in a different place with different parents and different circumstances in my life, would I still be offended right now? If this person had grown up in a different place with different parents and different circumstances, would they even be doing what they're doing right now? The answer to both questions is quite possibly no. So be happy knowing that we are all products of our circumstances to a certain degree, and that we are here to live in harmony, not conflict. This next quote is the final lesson that I want to share from Marcus Aurelius, and it says, quote, "Consider that a good disposition is invincible, if it be genuine, and not an affected smile and acting a part. For what will the most violent man do to thee, if thou continuest to be of a kind disposition towards him, and if, as opportunity offers, thou gently admonishest him, and calmly correctest his errors at the very time when he was trying to do thee harm, saying, 'Not so, my child. We are constituted by nature for something else. I shall certainly not be injured, but thou art injuring thyself, my child.'" End quote. When dealing with negative or hurtful people, it is always a good tactic to employ goodwill. We must love those who do us harm, for we are not made for conflict. As we have discussed, when others wish us harm, it is only themselves who are harmed. We have the choice of remaining intact, and we have the ability to react to them only with love and patience. No one can stay angry at us or wish us harm for long if we face them with a clear conscience and a happy heart. If you will think about these 8 lessons that I've shared, every time you feel offended or hurt, then soon you will have built a strong guard against these people. Remember that the goal is never to change other people, but it is instead to change ourselves and the way that we see the situation. You cannot change the way that others act towards you, but you can change the way that you react to those people's actions. Marcus Aurelius was the ruler of one of the largest empires in history, and obviously he would have had more interactions with more kinds of people than we could ever expect to have. He is an expert on people. His Stoic philosophies are highly effective for anyone wishing to react better to those people who we interact with, and so I hope that you will take these lessons and put them to use daily. Only through action will you find the satisfaction that you are looking for, and soon you will have built a strong character that will guard you against all who would wish you harm. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and thank you to those who have been listening to all of the episodes that I've been putting out. I really appreciate all of the support that you've been giving me, and if you have any suggestions or if you'd like to suggest a particular topic for a future episode, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook at Daily Stoic Quotes, or you can just go to my website and send me an email. It's risetothegoodlife.com. Also, if you have been enjoying the podcast, please consider reviewing the podcast on iTunes. This is just really helpful when it comes to getting the podcast out there to new audiences and new people who might enjoy it just as much as you. So I'd really appreciate that. But for now, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope that you've got a lot of value out of it, and I hope that I've helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I really hope that it's valuable to you, and I really hope that it helps you to live a better life. If it has been valuable to you, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and leave a positive review. If you'd like to see more free resources, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com.